Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Opinionated SEO Opinions. We have Nikki Halliwell with us, and we're going to discuss everything about SEO migrations this month. This is the final recording that we're doing in 2023, so it's a very exciting episode for us as well. And I'm here with our host, Tori Gray. Hello, Tori.
Hello.
So without further ado, let's just get to it. Nikki, we have been fans of the newsletter, but if there is anything else that you want to share with our audience, please go ahead and give us a little intro.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to be here. Everyone keeps saying it's like it's the last thing of 2023, and my brain is still in like summer somehow. I don't know what happened after summer for us to get so quickly to December. But yeah, it's definitely flown by. Thank you for mentioning the newsletter. It's Tech SEO Tips. I also have a website called techseoaudits.com, which does, as the name suggests, we provide tech audits, and it allows you to like customize your package to suit you. But I am a tech SEO consultant. I work for myself, and I also work for an agency full-time. So I basically have two jobs in SEO because I'm a glutton for punishment. But I've worked across a wide range of industries, including like health, hospitality, fashion. But most of all, I do enjoy e-commerce websites and just working to ensure that they are easy to find, load quickly, work efficiently, and all of that fun stuff.
E-commerce sites are so fun. They're so weirdly juicy. I love them. There's so many problems, right? It's exciting to unravel.
I like them. And you can, there's always something new to find and something else that's gone wrong. And I love going down a little rabbit hole or a wormhole, whatever you want to call it. And yes, figuring out what we're going to do about it.
Amazing.
Well, we're excited to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I was excited when you reached out and asked me to be here. I was really happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And today we are going to dig deep into another very deep wormhole. So let's get started with the migrations. What are some of the most common issues that pop up with different types of migrations that you have seen?
I mean, there's definitely another wormhole, isn't it, with migrations? I think the most obvious one is loss of search rankings and unorganic traffic, and more often than not, that does tend to come from like lack of implementation of redirects, but it can also be caused by lots of other reasons, and we could also like dig into those reasons as well if we need to. But there's also things like extended downtime during the migration, or just things just breaking when they go live, and just not appearing as they should, even though they looked fine on staging. But then the minute they go live, it's all gone a bit doolally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are like the juiciest weird edge cases? Like when you found that one thing that you're like, wow, that's a new way that broke with the migration. What are your fun fires that you fought before?
I had one where we're already going down the rabbit hole of subfolders and subdomains. I didn't think we'd get there this early, but we're about to go there. So it was like an international domain, and on staging site, it had been designed to use international subfolders. So it was going to have UK, DE, all that fun stuff. It was all great. It had all been planned. The redirects had been, ready to be uploaded. And then for some reason, when it went live, it was on a subdomain. And it was like, well, how have we gone from that to that at like the click of a button when that was never intended to be the case? So that was more of a surprising one when that happened. Well, definitely a surprising one when that happened, because it was like, that's not even on the cards for that to be an option.
We did not do this planning.
No, not at all.
Oh my goodness. Chaos.
Yeah. What have you come across? Have you had any really weird and juicy ones?
Too many to name, but one of my favorite ones was a little bit after Google went into the mobile first indexing. Mm-hmm. And I think it was our first migration that we were handling after that. And this particular site, it was great. It looked to be very smooth. We ran our crawls. Everything was fine. We're doing all of our normal checks, right? Like the redirects are in place. All the pages that should be there are there. All the content on those pages are there. Those pages look good in terms of their canonicals, and, things are fine. Things are great. And then suddenly the site's taking in GSC, and like, what the heck is going wrong? Come to find out, specifically on the mobile design, certain pages had a meta robots no index, but only on mobile. So you had to be crawling with the mobile crawler, which only mattered because we had just switched to mobile indexing, but it wasn't on our checklist of things to check because that wasn't a thing before.
Because it was new, yeah.
It was new. And it was also like such a weird, it was a WordPress site, and it was some plugin that added, that like they didn't even need to. They just kind of, I think they added it at the last minute. Not that we would have found it anyway. Now we would. Now it's on our checklist, right? But they added it thinking they needed to change their checkout process design-wise. And so they added this plugin, and for some reason, the plugin just decided to no index all the pages it was active on.
Ah, that's fun. That's super fun.
It's a terrible idea. Why would you do that, plugin? But it did that. And so it was such a strange, investigating and finding that. Weird and fun. I love the rabbit holes like that.
Yeah, it's fun as well. Like when you'd have like a new website that's being built, and you have like completely separate designs for desktop and mobile, and often there'd be like big differences between them, whereas you don't get that so much anymore because obviously we have responsive design, and it's a lot easier. But it's it must have been like really, I didn't really work on a migration back then, but it must have been really annoying when you had like the separate like M dot.
Yeah, the M dots. Then you did have to crawl it all separately. But yeah, this was a responsive site. It's not something you'd think about. Or I had another site where, it wasn't migration related, but despite being a responsive site, they just didn't, I think they used CSS to hide content on some pages, on some templates. And then they didn't have meta descriptions. So somehow the mobile version just hid them, but it was there on desktop. Very strange.
Was that due to the same plugin as well?
No, that was like a big enterprise e-commerce migration. So it was just like a custom build, and they were moving to an SPA. That was kind of a whole hot mess. Don't build your e-commerce sites on single page applications. Don't.
Oh yes, single page applications is.
This is my PSA. It's a terrible idea. That's not what SPAs are for. Anyhow.
Oh. Lovely. So when it comes to these kind of like different stuff and working with different teams, what have you found most successful in collaborating with teams to execute the migrations?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. I think the most effective thing has been creating a clear migration timeline, and I say that with a little bit of hesitation because I know that there's so many moving parts in a migration, and they very rarely actually go to plan, especially the initial deadline that you have when they're like, oh, we're going to do this. The amount of time it changes is ridiculous, at least in my experience. But having all that out on like a spreadsheet, and the way that I do it rather than the way that I do it that makes it the most effective for all of us, given that there's so many moving parts, is breaking it down by key phases or key milestones rather than people saying, okay, we need to have this done by this date. I found that breaking it down that way makes it a lot easier for people to understand, and it actually keeps it moving a lot more effectively as well. But also just making sure that everyone is aware of their accountabilities. So as well as having these milestones, we have various tasks that we need to complete as part of each milestone, and then saying, right, Nikki's responsible for this one, the devs are responsible for this, the client needs to do this, okay, Tori needs to do this, and then it just means that everyone is fully aware of where the blockers are as well, and if the blocker is with them, then people feel a lot more self-conscious and tend to get things done a lot quicker. But also just keeping those regular lines of communication open, which sounds quite obvious and quite basic to some people, but it's the most crucial thing in a migration because of all of the moving parts. Yeah, and I think it also, to answer that, I think if you can speak the language of the developers and actually get a seat at the table with them, that can help you get ahead of any issues before they occur, because these are the people that are doing the work. Whereas if you're going through other people to tell them what the problems are or what you need or whatever the case may be, things can often get lost in translation. Whereas if you're able to just speak to them, even if it's on like a stand-up once a week, that can be invaluable. Ideally more times if you can, especially as we're getting closer to go time. But yeah, just speaking to the people that are hitting the big red go live button is the most crucial thing.
Yeah. And sometimes they spring that on you. Sometimes they're like, oh yeah, we went live last week. We just forgot to tell you. Whoops.
Yeah. That's always fun. I know I've got a client who wants to launch on a Saturday, and I'm like, let's not do that, because it's like a big e-commerce site as well, and it's like, no, let's not do it on a Saturday, because that's
Isn't that a shopping day?
Well. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they think it's going to be less busy because they're not in the office. It's like, well, that's why it's a bad idea to launch then, because no one's around to fix it when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah. And it's when people are
having.
hanging out attempting to shop on your website.
Yeah, I know. And it all breaks. That'll be fun.
Yes. No. Super, super unfun. I love that. Yeah, the accountability I think is super critical, and just who is accountable for what. So that's amazing that that's part of your process. Just keep things moving smoothly, and hopefully that helps with the problem of whoops, it launched and we forgot to tell you. Because it's weird how often that still happens, frankly. Despite everything, all the working together, it still seems to once in a while surprise you.
And that actually makes me feel lucky for like the recent 2 migrations that I was working on being postponed rather than being live and just saying that, hey, yeah, we went live anyways, or yeah. And like from what I've seen, it is very common for developers to say that like we couldn't do this on time, so we're going to extend this and go live next week, or clients to say that. But when it comes to SEO, I feel like we are in the position to say like, okay, we check this, we check that, like everything is ready, the staging is checked, etc. We are not usually the extenders of that period before going live. So what are your thoughts during that phase? Like, how do you plan your days, or like the period that you're working through, I guess, during a migration when things get canceled, or how do you accommodate that, like changes in timeline?
Shifts.
Yeah, I think that's why I've changed my approach rather than doing it by set date. It's why I tend to do it by milestones now, and that really does help in that respect. I've also got like a few steps built into my plan where it's before we move on to the others, all of the stakeholders have to agree and sign off. And obviously that becomes a lot more crucial when we're getting to like the final stages, when it's like redirect, sign off, and then like final checks, like, you know, the day before or a couple of days before we actually go launch. And in that case, SEO can be the blockers, because if I'm not happy, it's not going live. But then the same thing happens, obviously, if the client isn't happy, it's not going live either. And that's worked really well. But yeah, I mean, I've not really come across many where it's earlier in the process that SEO is actually the blockers, and hopefully it'll stay that way. At least for the most part. It's more often than not that we're just not included in the conversations, isn't it? And it's similar to what Tori just mentioned, where it's like, oh yeah, we've gone live and we didn't tell you. It's because people don't think that we need to know such a thing, or it's like, oh yeah, we've made this big change to the design, or oh yeah, we're not keeping all of these products anymore. It's things like that where you find out after on, and then we've got to like pick up the pieces and figure it all out.
Yep.
Definitely.
Or like I've been part of a migration where, like, you know, they wanted hands off. They wanted just handle the redirects. We'll be fine with everything else. And we have that conversation about like are you sure? Because things can and will go wrong. And then they decide to retire 50 or 10,000 pages and just not tell you. And then just be surprised when that doesn't go well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You've got to be like, expect the unexpected, but then you can only check things that you know about. It's like what you were saying with, you know, the mobile example. Like if you don't know about it and you've not come across it before, you might not know that it's a thing to check. And it's the same with like a regular site audit. It's not just specific to migrations. It's like a checklist helps, doesn't it, with all of these things, but it's not everything, unfortunately.
It's not. Do you have other procedures, processes in place that help, you know, because inevitably new things will break in new ways, or Google will add new things, right? And we can't anticipate everything. So how do you know about things quickly and get in front and solve issues so that they don't get worse before they get better?
Yeah, so I tried to check the site at least every day or every other day, depending on how far along we are in the process, and just see what's changed and check Slack. Everyone seems to put everything on Slack these days, so just be aware of those conversations, but also just using the site and putting my little customer hat on, or whatever the case may be, depending on what type of site that it may be, and be like, right, can I actually use this? Can I check out in the way that I would want to? Can I find out more about this service that the business is offering? And then that helps in finding things out, because you might think that everything's fine, doing our amazing checklist that we love, and that's fine, but actually using the site can be one that's overlooked, strangely enough, a lot. And you can find weird things that you might not have otherwise found. I mean, this wasn't as part of a migration, but it was a client that I was working with on their mobile site. So it all looked great, but when you went on mobile, they had a little what's it called, like the chatbot icon, where you like click to chat to like AI type thing. That was in the way of their checkout button, and you couldn't move it either. So you go through the journey and you're like, right, I want to give you my money, and you couldn't because the chatbot was in the way and you couldn't move it. So that was like another example that I wouldn't have found that in any of my checklists, because that wasn't a thing. But only through actually using the site was it something that we came across.
Yep. Excellent point. And making sure, again, people have their right roles and the things that they're assigned to can help with that. Who's doing the checkout flow testing? And it can be strange how often that doesn't happen, which is odd, especially in e-commerce world. Or, how many times does a site migrate because somebody's owning data, and then so that's not in your purview, and then you launch without your UA code. And oh no, everyone's freaking out because traffic's tanking, but it's really just because they forgot to switch out the UA code or make sure it was re-added on the new site or what may have you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Do you find that you have like a lot of migrations that are like phased? So it's like, okay, so we'll just do this sort of the site first, or we'll, then we'll move on to this, or do you get more that are like, we'll just do everything at once?
I feel like everyone wants to do everything at once. It takes work to convince people to phase it out, in my experience. And it's often a better idea, but they're often, they just want to rip the Band-Aid off and all or nothing. What about you? Is that what you see?
My migration seems to have gone the other way. So depending on the size of the site, I kind of prefer to do all at once, and then we can work on it that way. But I've got a few at the minute, especially a few in like financial sort of industries that are wanting to do it bit by bit, which obviously I get. It's a very risky thing to do anyway, doing a migration, but especially when you're in industries such as that, I definitely do understand the extra caution. But I'm finding more and more that are doing it that way, and I'm the one that's like, can we just go live now, please? But it's it's interesting to see like the different ways that people always approach it.
Yeah. Well, there's the different like site section approach. I also like changing different things. So if you're going to reskin the site, like, and you have a new design, let's do that as a phase. And if we could break that apart from like the navigation changes, mostly in terms of like identifying, there's something broke something. What was it? Was it the redesign? Was it the navigation change? Was it this? Like piecemealing that out, I find can be really useful. But I think complexity of like different site sections changing it. It depends. Like, is it just, if you're doing a whole new redesign, you can't have the new redesign on one section and not the other without creating a really
that's what they're doing.
Experience.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, that is a really good point, and definitely if you're changing more than one thing at once, definitely in that case do phase it out. But they're doing a CMS change bit by bit, which does come with some changes to the design because of the new CMS, and they're doing it gradually by that, and that's going to be weird for some of their customers, but we're doing it on the less popular areas of the site first, and move it forward that way. So that will be an interesting one, and a first one for me, definitely seeing how the users encounter the slight differences, because there are some that are noticeable, but nothing hopefully too drastic from what we've seen so far.
The weird in between.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if it would affect a user from the brand perspective. Like, would they have any, I don't know, discrepancies, I guess, in between how the brand is out there would change for the users, etc.
Yeah, I
Interesting.
think there's definitely the potential for that, isn't there? Because it's like the financial industries and like trust is a really big thing. And then if you're suddenly coming across a page that doesn't look like the others, it'd be like, hang on, is this a scam site? Like what's happened here? But yeah, it's something that we're having to, of course, be really careful of, and the brand are aware of that, and we're limiting it as much as we can. But yeah, the CMS does mean that certain things do have to look different, but all of the major things are staying the same. So obviously, like the logo and all of the colors and things like that, as much as we can, we're trying to mitigate it. But yeah, it definitely is something that we're having to keep in mind and make sure the client is aware of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that trust is really, really critical. To that end, when you're working with a business who's considering a migration, what are the questions, what are the considerations that you're discussing with them as they make that decision? As the SEO stakeholder, how are you helping them? What questions are you asking them?
Yeah, so I built a migration like briefing document or whatever you want to call it, that I either complete myself through conversations or I ask the client to complete. And that allows us to basically capture all of the relevant information at the earliest stage possible. Of course, things can change as we go on, but I found that to be really useful, and that includes things like, why are you migrating? What is it that we're changing? Is it a reskin, CMS, domain? Excuse me. Yeah, why do we actually need to do this? And that obviously informs decisions that you make further down the line. What is being migrated? We're just doing the blog. Are we doing everything? Similar to what we were just saying. We want to know things like, when are you planning to go live? Are there any like considerations that we need to know, such as like peak season, or like a code freeze even, which can happen even during a migration. There might be things where actually we just need to down tools for a few months. How far along in the build process actually is another question, because they don't always come to you when they're just about to start. Sometimes it can be quite
We're
down the
launching
line.
next week. Can you help us with this migration?
Yeah, exactly. I've had that with a few clients with my own business, and it's just like, okay, Jesus Christ, like, okay, let's go. And getting on, can we have access to the staging site as well? Just making sure you can actually have that. Otherwise, oh yeah, we're migrating, you just need to deal with it when it goes live. And it's like, no, not gonna have that.
We could do that, but that's going to be bad for you.
Well, yeah.
You'll like that less, I swear.
Yeah. I also include things like, what developer support or resources do you have, or is it just me and you, or do you have any additional support? Are you changing the structure, the design, the content, or all of the above? How much support do you need for like redirects, and what will the CMS be on, and also what do you want to achieve on the back of this? Like anything else that we need to know before we get started. And I find like just capturing all of these questions and more, and as many of them as you can, really does help. And it also gives that extra reassurance, I find, for the business, and they're like, oh, okay, this person does know what they're talking about, and I feel like they feel that they're in a safer pair of hands that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are great questions. It sounds like it aligns a lot with how we do it, frankly. Trying to understand those things, set those roles, set the expectations. What are there's what they want to come out of the migration, and then there's the reality of the work that they're willing to do to make that happen sometimes, right? So sometimes people expect a migration to drop, but then they're improving things, and then we can reset and say, good news, like, we're handling this well. You're actually going to be growing, is our expectation as a part of this migration. Like, out the gate, you're just going to do better. Is it a domain migration? Then you're going to lose some traffic, period, end of story. Like, it's just going to go away to some extent, right? Like, there's different situations, or I just think helping them understand that, because I think for a lot of our clients anyway, there's an expectation to try and minimize traffic loss. It's a lot of bigger sites. So it's just, hey, we're not really improving. We're often like making big structural technical changes, like replatforming. And so the improvements aren't necessarily going to come until later. And so the goal is really just to not break anything as much as possible. And then we'll improve over time. And so what does that mean? And are we making the right decisions? Because that also means, hey, you can't break things that you have today. And some things that are broken today, you might actually need to fix, even if it's not an improvement. Google, right, during migrations, Google's paying attention to your site in a concerted way, in a way that it hasn't since the last time you migrated. And that's the time where I see them suddenly pay attention to your hreflang implementation and suddenly pay attention to this blog post that's been performing well for 5 years and you've just, you're on your pedestal. That's when you get knocked down, because that's when Google pays attention. So sometimes you need to fix things you don't think you need to fix in order to avoid traffic losses at that time.
Yeah, so. I really like that. That's a really good point. And also just like, what's your budget is obviously a really key question as well, because they might want the world, but they've only got a budget that's peanuts, unfortunately, and then you've got to like set expectations even more. And that's always a fun conversation to have. But yeah, it's all about just like mitigating that risk and mitigating that loss as well as much as you can within the remit.
Yeah. And how do you work with like so I find that there can often be a challenge between the client who's not necessarily technical. So like, who's the client, marketing manager contact. So whether that's an external vendor that's building their website or their IT and development, embedded engineering team, not necessarily knowing and understanding all the moving pieces in terms of the tech. And then you being there and then you trying to communicate with tech, but then your contact is with marketing, and then trying to like be successful with engineering through that marketing manager. How do you make that work for you?
So first of all is Slack, just trying to get direct communication with the relevant people, especially if there's like people like us right now. We're in like 3 completely different countries, which does often happen with a migration. You might have stakeholders in other countries as well. So Slack is really useful because you can message them very quickly, and often, even if they're in a different country, depending on whereabouts in the world they are, you can hopefully get a quick answer. But at least having like a stand-up call like 1 day a week and try to get all of those key stakeholders on that same call, which sure, that's easier said than done, and it's not always possible. So at least if you've got Slack, you've got the update from Begum, because she can't make it this week, but I know what she's been working on, and vice versa. And just getting that call in again hopefully mitigates the like loss of things in translation, because I can speak directly to that person and vice versa. And I mean, like, email is fine, but Slack tends to be a lot better, not just because it's quicker, but also people are sometimes less formal on Slack, which is exactly what you want when you just need a quick answer during a migration. And sure, things can get lost if you've got things like a lot of conversations going on, but that's why we follow up and we do have that stand-up call as well, so that we can reiterate that point if we need to, or get that answer as well. And hopefully, so far, touch wood, that tends to be working well in my experience.
I think you nailed it. It's that personal connection. It's the eliminating the telephone, the game of telephone, right? The man in between, and really, I don't know, having a real relationship where possible with that developer, where they're willing to take the time with you, and allow you to be in their Slack or have that Slack connection to, and trust that you know what you're doing. And just like sympathize with the marketing manager or whoever it is that might be the first time that they've done a migration, and they're actually like, they look like a swan, so they look like they're all graceful and handling it nicely, but underneath they're panicking and their feet are going 100 miles an hour because they're panicking. But you're there to help them as well as to help the devs, so just reassure them and just be like, okay, this is the reason that we're doing this. And sometimes you might need to have like an extra call with them to reassure them and make sure that they understand, but it's so
worth it in the long run, because once they understand what you're saying to the devs or to their stakeholders, more often than not, they're going to agree with you, and then you've got extra buy-in that's going to help you push it through. So just take the extra time where you need to, make sure you're speaking the right language, and it absolutely pays dividends.
Absolutely. Okay.
That is just, I think that's so powerful. And when we were talking about setting expectations earlier, I think it kind of translates into us doing our work as well. So we kind of have to acknowledge what we're doing and kind of have that like positive angle for ourselves as well. Like, what are we trying to achieve working on this migration, and what are going to be the outcomes as an SEO? So when you are focusing on the issues, let's say, what are some potential positives that you're looking to get out of the migrations as an SEO?
Yeah, I like that, because it's always, oh, we've done a migration, this has gone wrong. But yeah, it's not really quite often a conversation that comes up of like, what can be the good about it? Why do it? So yeah, I like that. The first one is things like improved web performance and user experience from like faster load times, especially if like it's been built on a custom platform that's been used by like a dozen devs over the years, and it's just build on top of build on top of build, and everything's a bit of a mess, and there's plugins in there that you don't know what they do anymore, but no one's
you can't turn it off because they'll break everything.
Break the site. Yeah. But you know, stripping all of them down can really help to improve the load time as well. Updating the web design, having something that's much fresher and cleaner, and an easier user interface, as well as like additional functionalities as well. That's like a really good one. So like, you know, we're migrating because we need this functionality, and we're gonna allow our users to do XYZ. There's things like content optimization as well. I've had this quite a bit where, again, it was another client in the financial industry actually. They found it really hard to update blogs and landing pages once they'd actually gone live because of the platform that they were on. And then they were migrating to another one so they could actually implement what we were asking them to do. And I think they'd gone to, I always get them mixed up, Content Stack or Contentful? Content Stack, I think. The names are too similar. They need to change. But they were moving to one of them, and it was a no-brainer when it comes to it, because yes, they could optimize content, but then they also had better control over their URL structure and just general content organization as well. You might also want to migrate because of new technologies, and again, like CMSs, allowing for like easier implementation of various capabilities that you might need in the site. So, you know, we're moving to this so that then we have access to this tool, and this will allow us to grow, which is like the number one thing is scalability. Everybody wants like a robust infrastructure that's going to allow the business, the website to grow and scale as the business expands, and not all platforms allow you to do that. So if you're able to move to one that does, then that's a win-win.
Yes. That's a really big one. To your point, yeah. When you just outgrow whatever it is, whatever platform you have, and you're really ready to be more robust, it's just huge. You know, there's also just the classic like rebrand, you know, to the extent that rebrand has been based in brand studies and UX work, and it really is like moving your brand forward in ways that communicate with your customer in a more meaningful way. It can be magical. I also think there can be positive traffic and conversion outcomes for SEO, because I feel like there's so much conversation around, you know, what traffic drops, you know, how painful was this migration and what went wrong. And certainly that happens. And there's certainly types of migrations, aka domain migrations, where that is inevitable. But, you know, I've been part of plenty of migrations where traffic increased because we didn't decide to just not leave, you know, to just not have things broken, or not, we didn't just make the bar, don't make it more broken than it is today. You know, we actually improved things. We had better UX, we had a better navigation, we had better page copy that we deployed that was more meaningful. We did the redirects really well. We added schema, or, whatever these features are. We improved the performance. So the people that we already had on the site did more of what we wanted them to do. And we had better SEO outcomes. So it is possible for certain migration types to really, truly just have a net positive outcome for SEO. If you're willing to do the work, if the budget's there, if you're willing to expend the resources and the strategy and the time to do it right.
Yeah, the time. I think that one's really crucial, as you say. Like, it can go right, but it's not going to happen overnight. We need to plan this out carefully and do all of the right things if you want that positive outcome.
Yep.
You need to invest in that and listen to what we're saying, and we'll get there together. But I mean that's similar to something that I was going to mention earlier. Actually, is like when we're like working with the business and communicating with them and wanting, of course, to have these successful outcomes. I don't just approach it as an SEO. I approach it as, okay, this is my website, this is my business. What would I want to do if this was me? And again, it just comes back to the point of like sympathizing with your stakeholders, whoever it is that you're working with, and just, again, it's trust. It's, a lot of the same points that I'm coming back to. But yeah, if you treat it as your business, would you actually still be saying the same things that you're saying now? Possibly, but possibly not, because you need to understand what they would need out of it as a business owner. And yeah, of course, everyone wants more traffic, more conversions, but there might be a reason why they're pushing back on that particular point, and just take a step back and think, okay, this is my website. Okay, I need to approach this slightly differently to get that same outcome.
You're speaking my language. Like, just being kind to people and understanding where they're coming from will get you really far in life. Who knew?
Yeah. Who knew?
Usually have a theme in the podcast or like the web series that everything comes down to communication with other teams and just understanding you're talking to people at the end of the day. So I really love that this conversation is also tying back to trust and having those humane factors in place.
Yeah, it was quite funny. So we were speaking with a client of ours at the agency I work for, Journey Further, and was speaking with them with one of the clients, and they were like, okay, we want to do a migration. And we went down to their office and was getting all of the details that we need about what this would be. And we also talked through what a generic approach would be. And of course, we tailored this down further down the timeline. But at that stage, it was just like very top level. And on each slide that I had, I'd be like, okay, we'd do X, Y, Z, last point, communication. Next slide, this stage, we would do ABC, communication. And it's like, it became a running joke that I had a line of some sort about communication on every slide. But yeah, you absolutely need to. And it may seem like it's overstated and original and obvious. I forgot the word then. Yeah, it may seem obvious to include it, but yeah, it's absolutely.
But it
crucial.
so often doesn't happen.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I'm glad that it's like a running theme for the podcast as well. That's funny.
Communicate. Have empathy.
Yeah.
Empathy. Everything else will follow.
Yeah.
Use your words, like I say to my 8-year-old. All right.
Love it.
When we talked about some of the positive outcomes, let's chat a little bit more about when the inevitable sometimes happens and there are bad outcomes, as in lost traffic, lost conversions from organic traffic or other channels, certainly. Yep. How do you go about mitigating that and investigating and, resolving those issues?
My first course of action is usually to check analytics. So again, what a point that you had earlier, check analytics. Is it actually have a UA tag in there? Is it tracking? Yeah, is it broken or is it there? And making sure that all of the specific and pages and keywords and all of that stuff is pulling through into whatever analytics platform you choose. And then I'll generally go and look at the redirects, make sure that they're actually all implemented as we expected, and all of them are actually redirecting, not just the homepage, which I have seen happen, because it's like, oh, we don't need that, right? As long as we redirect the homepage, we don't need these other 5,000 redirects to happen. It's like, yeah, you kind of do, just slightly. If you care about your business and traffic, you might want to implement all of those other ones as well. Is the site indexable? Is it still have like blockers from the staging site. That's like a common one. So check for things like meta robots, as well as any rules that have been left behind in the robots.txt. On-page elements, is all of that correct? Is there anything that's gone a bit awry as it was making that transition from staging to live? XML sitemap as well. Is that actually been updated, or has that somehow been left behind? Which again has happened with some of mine. It's still got all of the old URLs in there, so we'd have a look, make sure it does have all of the correct URLs for the new site in there. It's submitted to Search Console, and it does accurately reflect the structure of the site as well. I'd also look for instances of duplication, especially if it's like an international website. Do we have hreflang set up correctly? Is it working as it needs to be? But also just content in general, even without it being an international site, is there any instances of duplication that have cropped up for any reason within all of that? Check the site speed. Is that a problem? Is there something that's happened within the code? There's something that's been left behind that shouldn't, that's really weighing down the site, because we know how that can affect user experience and rankings as well, when a site does load slow. But also, I think this is important for any sort of migration, but more important if you're doing like a domain change, and that's the status of backlinks pointing to the site, especially if you've done a lot of PR over the years and you've got influential domains that are linking to you. You've changed your domain name, so are they actually still linking to you? Is there something that's happened there that you need to look into? You don't want to be missing out on that equity and that traffic potentially that you might have gotten from those backlinks. And then again, our old favorite, communicating with stakeholders. Are they aware of anything that's happened on their side, like anything with their higher ups that might have influenced anything that they don't know about? Just ask that question. Sometimes it might actually be the case that everything else is fine, but one of the directors suddenly decided that they wanted to do something, and that's actually had not the desired outcome, shall we say. But just getting that all information, analyze as much as you can, be patient actually as well, and just monitor it. Is it just something that's happened on one day, or does that trend continue over time? And just monitor that, and once you've got all of that information that you need from everybody, analyze it and carefully make a decision. Sometimes that can be not to take any action. There are absolutely instances where that's a valid answer, but sometimes you of course might need to actually do something, but make sure it's an informed decision, and annotate on analytics, right? Obviously you want to actually annotate go live day on analytics, but then if you're making any other changes, make a note of that as well, so that whether it's you or another member of the team that's coming back and having a look and trying to figure out what happened, they can quickly and easily see that, okay, yeah, that change happened then, and they're not having to go around and ask all the same questions that you've just asked. And it makes it so much easier in the long run just to keep detailed records and make sure that everything's as clear as it can be.
All the different timelines, and just remembering that things outside of the migration happen too, especially in this year of how many Google algorithm updates. Like,
I think we're on 10.
It's an external cause. Sometimes the competition changed. They added in a new feature, so it's entirely possible that it's not related to your migration at all, but it just makes the analysis more complicated because of the time correlation, right? But
but that's why we like SEOs, because it's never easy, right? There's always something else to dig into. It's not just, oh yeah, it was because of this. There's so many moving parts, and I think
we're detectives, aren't we?
Yeah,
the detectives of the internet.
Yeah,
there we go. Sherlocks, basically, just a bunch of little Sherlock nerds.
Love it.
Amazing. Any other questions you have for us, Tori?
Yeah, I think we are all set. I think we've had a fun and juicy and lovely conversation about one of my favorite subjects, frankly, migrations. So thank you so much for joining us, Nikki. It's been a real pleasure to get to know you a little bit better and see you in this weird digital format, right? So thank you for
Yeah,
taking the time.
hopefully. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I'll see you both again at another conference somewhere in the world.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, coming up soon. Are you? Yeah, hopefully Women in Tech SEO in London. Thank you for joining us on the Opinionated SEO Opinions. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us at thegray.company/ask-SEO questions. We will be here and we want to know what you want to know. So fill it out. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.